Welcome back to Atomic News, monitoring global chaos so you don't have to. The Middle East is sliding deeper into chaos, and the Strait of Hormuz is again at the center of it. President Trump has now given Iran a 48-hour ultimatum: fully reopen the strait, or the United States will start destroying Iranian power plants. Tehran answered with its own threat, saying any such strike would trigger retaliation against U.S.-linked energy and IT infrastructure across the Gulf. And it is worth remembering that just yesterday, Trump was saying Hormuz was not really America's problem, arguing that other countries depend on it more than the United States does. At the same time, Iran has now said it would completely close the strait if Washington follows through with strikes on Iranian energy infrastructure. And while Trump is publicly waving a hammer, behind the curtain his team is already sketching out a possible deal. According to Axios, people around Trump, including Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, have started preliminary planning for potential peace talks with Iran. The idea seems simple: hit hard enough, create enough fear, then drag Tehran to the table from a position of weakness. So Washington is now running a two-track strategy at once: maximum pressure in public, possible diplomacy in private. Meanwhile, Iranian missile strikes on Israel continue. Overnight, 2 ballistic missiles hit Arad and Dimona in southern Israel. In Arad, one missile struck a residential apartment block, damaging at least 8 buildings and injuring 31 people, including 18 children, with 9 reported in serious condition. In Dimona, 5 more people were hospitalized, including a 12-year-old in serious condition. So while diplomats talk, civilians keep getting pulled out from under concrete. The world's reaction is nervous, cautious, and very revealing. The G7 says it is ready to act to protect energy supplies and shipping security in and around Hormuz. That alone shows how seriously this is being taken in the major capitals. Nobody wants to be dragged deeper into the furnace, but nobody can ignore the consequences either. And the fuel shock is already here. In the United States, pump prices are up more than 30% since late February. In Britain, which works as a decent snapshot of the pain hitting Europe, petrol prices are up by roughly 9% over the last 3 weeks, while diesel is up about 17%. In China, Beijing responded with the biggest increase in regulated retail fuel price caps in 4 years, roughly 9.6% in one move. And guess in which country prices didn't rise? There is also the military side of this story, and it matters. By this stage of the campaign, the United States says it has struck around 7,000 targets in Iran, while U.S. officials say more than 40 Iranian mine-laying vessels and 11 submarines have been destroyed. Separate Israeli assessments cited in open reporting say over 60% of Iran's missile launchers and around 80% of its air defense systems have already been knocked out. So Iran may no longer look like the regional military mastodon it was a month ago. But the important thing is not how many strikes it can still launch. The important thing is that it can still launch them at all. That is the real problem. Iran can be badly degraded as a conventional military machine, but that is not the same as stripping it of the ability to hurt the world. Those are 2 different tasks. Launchers, air defenses, radars, naval assets, and command nodes can be systematically broken from the air. But dispersed asymmetric capabilities are far harder to eliminate. Underground stockpiles, drone production, mobile launchers, proxy networks, sabotage cells, and the regime's political will to keep causing damage. And the ugly truth is that the only way to truly try to wipe all of that out would be some form of occupation and internal cleanup across Iran itself, which is also close to impossible, both militarily and politically. So the real objective for Washington and Jerusalem is likely not some final, clean defeat, but to reduce Iran's capacity for disruption to a more manageable level through continued military pressure, attrition, and coercive diplomacy. And even if Iran's stockpiles of Shahed drones and ballistic missiles are eventually depleted, the threat does not disappear. It simply shifts form. A regime built around proxy networks, covert cells, sabotage, and ideological radicalization can still export violence far beyond the battlefield, from the Gulf to Europe and the United States. While much of the world is only beginning to think seriously about the shift from old industrial age warfare towards something new and is just now staring hard at drones, AI, and autonomy, Ukraine is already fighting inside that transition. One example is the Phantom Mk-1 humanoid robot. Two of them were delivered to Ukraine for battlefield testing. Reporting around the program says they can carry weapons, breach doors, and are being evaluated for practical battlefield roles such as reconnaissance and other dangerous tasks, rather than as some fully autonomous sci-fi super soldier. So no, Ukraine does not suddenly have robot infantry, but it does mean Ukrainian forces are among the first armies in the world testing whether humanoid systems can actually be useful under live combat conditions. And yes, even Russian State Duma Deputy Andrei Svintsov has already started whining that Russian troops may soon be fighting Terminators. For once, his paranoia is pointed in roughly the correct direction. Then come the exoskeletons. And here reality is much more pragmatic than science fiction. We are not talking about Edge of Tomorrow suits or Fallout power armor. The technology is nowhere near that point, and for frontline infantry, the same old problem still gets in the way: battery life. That is exactly why Ukraine appears to be using exoskeletons where they make the most sense right now, not for assault troops, but for the people who spend their day hauling heavy ammunition. Ukraine's 7th Air Assault Corps has begun testing lightweight lower-body exoskeletons, likely hypershell-type systems, or something very similar, including in the 147th Separate Artillery Brigade on the Pokrovsk axis. Reports on the trials say they can reduce physical strain by up to 30%, support movement up to 20 kilometers per hour, and work for roughly 17 kilometers on one charge. For artillery crews and mortar teams, that is a genuinely useful tool, not cosplay from the future. And frankly, now we are just waiting for Ukraine to start fielding Gravity Industries jetpacks so the Russians can lose whatever is left of their minds. But the most important part of this story is bigger than either the robots or the exoskeletons. On March 17th, Ukraine's Ministry of Defense launched the A1 Defense AI Center, the first center in a broader system meant to integrate artificial intelligence into defense processes. Its role is to turn combat data into faster analysis, forecasting enemy actions, autonomous systems, and better command tools. Britain backed the launch with £500,000, which makes clear this is not some flashy side project, but a serious institutional push, and A1 is only one part of the bigger move. Ukraine has also opened access to real battlefield data for allied countries and defense companies, so AI models for drones and autonomous systems can be trained on actual combat conditions. That data includes millions of annotated images from thousands of combat flights, shared through a secure framework designed to protect sensitive information while still allowing model training. In plain English, Ukraine is no longer just using military technology. It is becoming one of the places where the next generation of military technology is being built, tested, and taught under live fire. And all of this exists for one simple reason. Not because Ukraine is rich, not because this war is easy, and not because anyone in Kiev is playing with futuristic toys for fun. Ukraine understands something fundamental. A small Soviet army will never defeat a big Soviet army. So the only viable strategy is to fight asymmetrically, to inflict maximum damage for minimum cost, and to destroy as much of the enemy as possible while paying with as few Ukrainian lives as possible. That is why Ukraine is trying to compensate for shortages of money with innovation and for shortages of manpower with systems that preserve combat power and, most importantly, save lives. Defense Minister Mikhailo Fedorov put that logic in brutally simple terms earlier this year, saying that 50,000 Russian losses per month would be the optimal level to make Russian losses unsustainable for Moscow to replace. The arithmetic behind that is simple. Russia's own officials said that more than 422,000 people signed contracts with the Russian army in 2025, plus another 32,000 who joined volunteer formations. That works out to roughly 38,000 fresh recruits per month. So Ukraine's strategy is obvious: inflict losses at a pace that matches or exceeds the Kremlin's ability to refill the ranks. And judging by the opening phase of Russia's spring-summer campaign, the invaders seem determined to help Ukraine meet that target ahead of schedule. In the finest traditions of the Soviet madhouse, they look ready to deliver the monthly quota early, like a 5-year plan completed in 3. This is Professor Nuke, and this was Atomic News. Stay alert.
So stay tuned for all the wondrous views. You're watching Atomic News.